Everyone knows dinosaurs ruled the ancient world. But what if I told you they were actually late arrivals to the party? Millions of years before T-Rex ever drew breath, nightmarish creatures dominated Earth that would make modern horror films look like children's cartoons. We're talking about sea monsters with razor-sharp claws longer than baseball bats, insects the size of small cars, and alien-looking predators that hunted in ways so terrifying they seem impossible. Today we're traveling back to when Earth was truly a planet of monsters, starting with a world so hostile that it barely resembled the planet we know today. When Earth was a living hell. Picture a world where the ground beneath your feet was molten rock, and the sky glowed orange from constant asteroid bombardment. 4.5 billion years ago, Earth resembled nothing like the planet we know today. The surface churned with volcanic eruptions, spewing toxic gases into an atmosphere thick with methane, ammonia, and hydrogen sulfide. Temperatures reached levels that would instantly vaporize any modern life form, and the very air would kill anything that dared to breathe it. Yet somehow, in this apocalyptic landscape, the first sparks of life began to emerge. The extreme conditions that seemed designed to destroy life actually created the perfect laboratory for its birth. Lightning strikes provided the energy needed to forge complex molecules from simple gases, while volcanic vents on the ocean floor created chemical reactions that had never occurred before. The constant bombardment of cosmic radiation and meteorites delivered organic compounds from space, adding ingredients to Earth's primordial soup that would prove essential for the emergence of living organisms. As the planet slowly cooled over millions of years, the first oceans formed from the condensation of water vapor in the atmosphere. These ancient seas were nothing like the blue waters we see today. Instead, they were murky, acidic pools filled with dissolved metals and chemicals that would be instantly lethal to modern marine life. Some underwater vents reached extreme temperatures, creating geysers and steam that made the ocean floor resemble an alien landscape. Within these hostile waters, the first microscopic organisms began to take shape around 3.8 billion years ago. These weren't the familiar bacteria we know today, but rather primitive cellular structures that could survive in conditions that would annihilate any modern life form. They thrived in boiling water, fed on sulfur compounds, and reproduced in environments so toxic that they would challenge our understanding of what life could endure. These early microbes possessed metabolic pathways that allowed them to extract energy from the most unlikely sources, turning poison into food and death into life. The most successful of these early organisms were cyanobacteria, which developed the ability to harness energy from sunlight through photosynthesis. This innovation would prove to be one of the most significant evolutionary developments in Earth's history, but it came with a terrifying consequence. As these microscopic factories spread across the ancient oceans, they began producing oxygen as a waste product, fundamentally altering the planet's chemistry in ways that would trigger the first mass extinction event. These bacterial colonies began forming complex layered structures called stromatolites, which resembled giant stone pillows rising from the ocean floor. Built through the repetitive growth of photosynthetic bacteria that trapped sediment particles between their layers, these formations created towers that could reach several feet in height. The stromatolites represented the first construction projects on Earth, built not by intelligence, but by the relentless activity of countless microscopic organisms working together. The bacteria within these structures were actively transforming the planet's atmosphere, pumping out oxygen at rates that would fundamentally change the rules of life on Earth. What seems beneficial to us today was actually a catastrophic event for the organisms of that time. This buildup of oxygen triggered the Great Oxidation Event, a mass die-off of anaerobic organisms that had evolved to survive in an oxygen-free environment. As oxygen levels rose, it created a poisonous atmosphere that killed off countless species in what became Earth's first Holocaust. This microscopic catastrophe cleared the way for a new type of organism that could not only tolerate oxygen, but actually use it to generate energy more efficiently than ever before. The bacteria that survived this toxic transformation became the foundation for all complex life that would follow. They developed sophisticated cellular machinery that could harness oxygen's destructive power and convert it into useful energy, setting the stage for the evolution of larger, more complex organisms. The stromatolite builders were reshaping Earth's surface in other ways as well. Their photosynthetic activity was gradually cooling the planet by removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, ending the extreme greenhouse conditions that had dominated the early Earth. This cooling effect would eventually lead to massive ice ages that covered much of the planet in glaciers, creating new environmental pressures that would drive further evolutionary innovation. These ancient microbial communities also began producing the first organic compounds that would serve as building blocks for more complex life forms. Microbial mats trapped sediment and released oxygen, paving the way for complex life. Within these primitive communities, different species of bacteria began developing specialized roles, with some focusing on photosynthesis, while others became skilled at decomposing organic matter or processing specific chemical compounds. The metabolic innovations of these early organisms established the fundamental biochemical processes that all future life would depend on. They invented cellular respiration, developed the first genetic storage systems, and created the basic molecular machinery that would be inherited by every living thing that followed. Their experiments with different cellular structures and metabolic pathways provided the evolutionary toolkit that would later be used to construct creatures beyond imagination. As these microscopic communities grew more complex, they began producing chemical signals that allowed them to communicate with each other across vast distances. They developed the ability to coordinate their activities, timing their reproduction cycles and responding collectively to environmental changes. This primitive form of biological cooperation would eventually evolve into the complex multicellular organisms that would dominate later periods. The stromatolite builders continued their work for over 1 billion years, steadily modifying Earth's chemistry and creating the conditions necessary for more complex life forms to emerge. Their patient construction projects filled ancient seas with layered limestone structures that would eventually become some of the oldest fossils on Earth. These microscopic architects were preparing the planet for something unprecedented. Creatures so bizarre and alien-looking that they would challenge everything we thought we knew about life itself. The first alien invasion. Around 575 million years ago, Earth experienced its first genuine alien invasion, though the invaders weren't from outer space. The Ediacaran period marked the moment when truly bizarre multicellular organisms began appearing in the ancient seas, creatures so strange that they seemed to follow completely different rules of biology than anything we see today. The fossil evidence of these creatures presents one of paleontology's greatest mysteries. Unlike the hard shells and bones that would preserve later animals for millions of years, these organisms possessed only soft tissues that left mere ghostly impressions in sedimentary rocks. Discovered first in Australia's Ediacara Hills in 1946, these soft-bodied creatures left only faint imprints in sandstone. When paleontologists first uncovered these fossils, they realized they had found something unprecedented in Earth's history. Dickinsonia stands out as perhaps the most perplexing of these ancient organisms. This creature resembled a quilted pancake that could grow over 3 feet in length, with its body divided into segments that created a distinctive ridged pattern across its surface. The symmetry of Dickinsonia defied conventional biological categories, displaying a form of organization that doesn't match any known animal, plant, or fungal structure. Recent chemical analysis has revealed that Dickinsonia contained cholesterol, suggesting possible connections to animals, fungi, or red algae, yet its overall body plan remains unlike anything that exists today. The feeding mechanisms of these Ediacaran organisms present another layer of mystery. Dickinsonia appears to have moved across the seafloor in a gliding motion, leaving behind trails that suggest it was somehow extracting nutrients from the bacterial mats beneath it. These creatures lacked mouths or guts entirely, instead absorbing nutrients directly through their skin from the surrounding seawater through osmosis. No evidence exists of digestive systems or any of the feeding structures that characterize later life forms. The body plans of these organisms suggest evolutionary experiments that took completely different paths than the animals that would follow. Their strange symmetries and modular constructions seem almost artificially designed, as if they were built according to geometric principles rather than biological necessities. Some possessed radial symmetry with patterns that repeated around a central axis, while others displayed bilateral symmetry but with arrangements of body segments that don't correspond to any known animal phylum. Sprigina represents another enigmatic member of this ancient community, resembling a segmented alien with a distinctive crescent-shaped head shield. This creature stretched up to 2 inches in length and possessed a series of segments that ran along its body, creating a superficial resemblance to later arthropods. However, the arrangement of these segments and the overall body architecture followed patterns that don't align with any known animal group. The head shield of Sprigina appears to have been rigid, while the body segments could flex, suggesting a form of locomotion that combined gliding with undulating movements. The diversity of forms within the Ediacaran biota suggests that these organisms were experimenting with multicellular organization in ways that would never be repeated in later evolutionary history. Some resembled fronds anchored to the seafloor, swaying in ancient currents like underwater ferns. Others took the form of discs, tubes, and complex branching structures that created 3-dimensional networks across the ocean bottom. The variety of body plans indicates that the fundamental rules governing multicellular organization were still being established during this period. The environmental conditions of the Ediacaran seas created a unique setting for these evolutionary experiments. The oceans contain lower oxygen levels than today, and the absence of hard-shelled predators meant that these soft-bodied organisms could grow large without developing protective armor. The seafloor was covered in extensive bacterial mats that provided a stable substrate for attachment and possibly a source of nutrients for the organisms living above them. The tissue organization of these creatures appears to have been fundamentally different from modern animals. Rather than developing complex organ systems, they seem to rely on simple cellular arrangements that could maintain basic life functions through direct contact with their environment. This approach to multicellular organization may have been perfectly suited to the low-energy conditions of the Ediacaran seas, where efficient nutrient extraction was more important than active hunting or complex behaviors. The mysterious nature of these organisms has led some paleontologists to propose that they represent completely extinct lineages that have no living descendants. Adolf Seilacher suggested creating a separate biological category called Vindobionta for these creatures, indicating that their bizarre forms might represent a failed experiment in multicellular life. This perspective highlights how radically different these organisms were from the animals that would eventually dominate Earth's ecosystems. The reproductive strategies of Ediacaran organisms remain largely unknown, as no clear evidence exists of sexual reproduction or the complex life cycles seen in later animals. Some fossils suggest that these creatures could reproduce through fragmentation, with pieces breaking off to form new individuals. Others may have released spores or gametes into the water column, though the mechanisms for such reproduction are purely speculative. The ecological relationships within Ediacaran communities appear to have been relatively simple compared to later periods. Without evidence of predation or complex feeding interactions, these organisms seem to have coexisted in relatively peaceful communities where competition was primarily for space and nutrients rather than involving active hunting or defensive behaviors. This lack of predation pressure may have allowed for the development of the large, soft-bodied forms that characterize this period. The global distribution of Ediacaran fossils indicates that these organisms colonized seafloor environments across multiple continents, suggesting that they were highly successful in their ecological niches. Fossil sites in Russia, Namibia, and Newfoundland have revealed similar assemblages of creatures, indicating that these organisms had achieved worldwide distribution during their evolutionary heyday. The sudden disappearance of the Ediacaran biota at the end of this period represents one of the most significant transitions in Earth's history. Multiple factors may have contributed to their extinction, including changing environmental conditions, the advent of new predators, and competition from emerging animal groups. The Ediacaran extinction event, approximately 539 million years ago, marked the end of these alien-like pioneers and set the stage for something far more violent and revolutionary than anything Earth had witnessed before: the Cambrian explosion of nightmares. Around 541 million years ago, Earth's oceans transformed from peaceful communities into violent battlegrounds, where evolutionary innovation exploded at unprecedented rates. The Cambrian period marked the moment when life abandoned its gentle existence and embraced warfare as the primary driver of change. The sudden appearance of hard shells, claws, and the first true weapons in nature triggered a biological arms race that escalated with each passing generation. The most revolutionary development during this period was the emergence of biomineralization, the process by which organisms began creating hard, mineralized structures like shells and exoskeletons. These weren't merely decorative features but rather sophisticated armor systems designed to protect against newly evolved predators. The soft-bodied creatures that had dominated the Ediacaran seas suddenly found themselves vulnerable to attack, forcing them to either develop protective shells or face extinction. This innovation transformed the ocean floor from a carpet of gentle filter feeders into a landscape of armored fortresses. The appearance of hard shells triggered an immediate response from predators, who began developing claws, spines, and crushing appendages capable of breaking through these new defenses. The ocean became filled with the sounds of shells cracking, claws scraping against armor, and the desperate movements of creatures trying to escape their newly armed enemies. This escalation continued throughout the Cambrian period, with each defensive innovation spurring the development of more sophisticated offensive weapons. Trilobites emerged as the period's most successful survivors, developing compound eyes that could detect the slightest movement in the murky waters around them. These arthropods possessed visual systems more advanced than many modern insects, with some species having over 15,000 individual lenses in each eye. Their compound eyes could detect polarized light, track multiple moving objects simultaneously, and spot predators approaching from virtually any angle. The trilobites used this superior vision to dominate the ocean floor, becoming the period's most diverse and widespread group of organisms. The development of vision itself represented a crucial turning point in the evolutionary arms race. Once creatures could see their prey and predators clearly, hunting strategies became exponentially more sophisticated. Predators began developing specialized hunting techniques, including ambush tactics, pursuit hunting, and coordinated attacks. The ability to track moving targets with precision transformed the ocean from a place where creatures simply filtered nutrients from the water into an active hunting ground, where visual predators pursued their prey with deadly efficiency. The bizarre body plans that emerged during this evolutionary free-for-all defied conventional understanding of animal design. Creatures developed 5 eyes, 50 legs, and body segments that could be rearranged like modular construction sets. Some organisms possessed grasping appendages that could extend far beyond their body length, while others developed defensive spines that could pivot and rotate to track approaching threats. The variety of forms that appeared during this period suggests that evolution was experimenting with every possible combination of body parts and arrangements. Opabinia exemplified the experimental nature of Cambrian evolution, possessing 5 mushroom-shaped eyes and a long proboscis tipped with a grasping claw. This creature combined the visual capabilities of a compound-eyed predator with the precision hunting tools of a specialized carnivore. Its unique body plan allowed it to hover above the seafloor while using its extensible proboscis to probe for small prey hiding in crevices and burrows. The success of such unusual designs demonstrates how the Cambrian explosion rewarded innovation over conventional body plans. The ocean floor became populated with scuttling, crawling nightmares that moved through the water with mechanical precision. Creatures developed jointed legs that could propel them across the seafloor at surprising speeds, while others evolved undulating body movements that allowed them to swim through the water column with serpentine grace. The diversity of locomotion methods meant that no hiding place was safe from the various predators that had evolved to exploit every available ecological niche. Spriggano represented one of the most intriguing experiments in defensive design, with its distinctive crescent-shaped head shield and segmented body that could flex and undulate for rapid movement. This creature's rigid front section provided protection, while its flexible posterior allowed for quick escapes from pursuing predators. The combination of defensive armor and mobility created a successful template that would influence arthropod design for millions of years. Wiewaxia developed a different approach to defense, covering its body with scale-like armor plates and defensive spines that could be raised or lowered depending on the threat level. This creature resembled a living medieval shield, with overlapping plates that provided comprehensive protection while still allowing for mobility. The sophisticated armor system of Wiewaxia suggests that predation pressure during the Cambrian was intense enough to drive the evolution of complex defensive mechanisms. The diversity of feeding strategies that emerged during this period transformed the ocean ecosystem into a complex web of predator-prey relationships. Filter feeders developed more efficient methods of extracting nutrients from the water, while predators evolved increasingly sophisticated hunting techniques. Some creatures became specialized for crushing shells, while others developed precision tools for extracting soft tissues from armored prey. The variety of feeding methods meant that every available food source was being exploited by specialized organisms. Morella, known as the lace crab, developed a unique feeding strategy that combined filter feeding with active predation. This creature possessed delicate branching gills that could filter small organisms from the water, while its grasping appendages captured larger prey. The combination of feeding methods allowed Morella to exploit multiple food sources simultaneously, giving it an advantage in the competitive Cambrian environment. The success of these early arthropods established the template for future marine ecosystems, with their segmented bodies, jointed appendages, and compound eyes becoming the standard design for aquatic predators. The innovations developed during the Cambrian explosion would influence the evolution of marine life for hundreds of millions of years, establishing the fundamental predator-prey relationships that continue to shape ocean ecosystems today. As the Cambrian period progressed, the intensity of predation continued to escalate, with creatures developing increasingly sophisticated weapons and defensive systems. The ocean had become a proving ground for evolutionary innovation, where only the most perfectly adapted organisms could survive the constant threat of predation. Among all these armored creatures scuttling across the seafloor, the stage was perfectly set for the emergence of something truly monstrous. Anomalocaris, the ocean's first serial killer. The creature that emerged from this evolutionary battleground would become among the first top predators in Earth's history. Anomalocaris measured up to 1.5 feet in length, enormous for its time in a world where most creatures barely reached the size of a modern coin. This massive size advantage transformed it into the undisputed apex predator of the Cambrian seas, a position it would hold for millions of years, while smaller organisms lived in constant fear of its presence. The body of Anomalocaris possessed a flexible, shrimp-like design that allowed it to move through the water with alien grace. Unlike the rigid exoskeletons that protected other Cambrian creatures, this predator's body could bend and twist in ways that seemed almost supernatural. Its segmented form undulated through the water like a living ribbon, creating sinuous movements that propelled it forward with surprising speed. The flexible nature of its body provided the agility needed to outmaneuver prey and launch attacks from unexpected angles. Two massive grasping appendages extended from the front of its body, functioning like mechanical claws designed specifically for capturing and holding struggling prey. These spiny appendages could extend far beyond the creature's head, allowing it to snatch victims from distances that seemed impossible for other predators to reach. The appendages possessed rows of sharp spines along their inner surfaces, creating a grip that few creatures could escape once they were caught. These specialized hunting tools could flex and rotate with precision, allowing Anomalocaris to manipulate captured prey with surgical accuracy. The mouth of this prehistoric nightmare presented perhaps its most terrifying feature. The circular opening was lined with razor-sharp teeth arranged in concentric rings, creating a crushing mechanism that could process even the hardest exoskeletons. This unique mouth structure functioned like a biological garbage disposal, capable of reducing armored trilobites to fragments within seconds. The teeth were positioned to maximize crushing force while preventing prey from escaping once the mouth began to close. Anomalocaris possessed two large compound eyes that provided it with visual capabilities far superior to most other Cambrian organisms. These compound lenses allowed for effective hunting even in the dim waters of the ancient seas, giving this predator a crucial advantage over its prey. The eyes could track multiple prey items simultaneously while scanning the surrounding waters for potential threats or opportunities. The compound structure allowed for detection of movement across a wide field of view, making it nearly impossible for prey to approach without being noticed. The hunting strategy employed by Anomalocaris relied heavily on its powerful swimming ability and capacity for surprise attacks. This predator could remain motionless in the water column, blending with the shadows until unsuspecting prey wandered within striking distance. When the moment was right, it would launch forward with explosive speed, using its flexible body to generate thrust that carried it toward its target faster than most creatures could react. The element of surprise was crucial to its success, as many potential prey items possessed their own defensive mechanisms that could be deployed if given sufficient warning. The terror inspired by Anomalocaris throughout the Cambrian ecosystem cannot be overstated. In a world still dominated entirely by invertebrates, with no vertebrates yet evolved, this creature represented the pinnacle of predatory evolution. Smaller creatures had no effective hiding places from this mobile predator, which could pursue them into crevices, across open water, and even into the sediment layers of the ocean floor. The constant threat of predation forced other organisms to develop increasingly sophisticated defensive strategies, including thicker shells, defensive spines, and improved escape responses. Trilobites, despite their advanced vision and protective exoskeletons, became frequent victims of Anomalocaris hunting techniques. The predator would use its grasping appendages to flip trilobites onto their backs, exposing the softer underside tissues that were easier to process. Once a trilobite was secured in this vulnerable position, Anomalocaris would use its circular mouth to systematically tear apart the armor plating with surgical precision. The efficiency of this hunting method allowed the predator to consume even the largest trilobites with minimal effort. The feeding behavior of Anomalocaris revealed sophisticated predatory strategies that went beyond simple opportunistic hunting. This creature appeared to select its prey based on size, nutritional content, and the effort required to process different types of armor. Smaller, soft-bodied organisms could be consumed whole, while larger armored prey required the specialized dismantling techniques that Anomalocaris had perfected. The predator's ability to adapt its hunting methods to different types of prey demonstrated a level of behavioral complexity that was unprecedented in the Cambrian seas. The success of Anomalocaris as an apex predator established evolutionary templates that would influence marine ecosystems for hundreds of millions of years. Its combination of large size, flexible body design, specialized grasping appendages, and powerful crushing mouth created a blueprint for oceanic predation that would be refined and modified by countless future species. The predatory strategies developed by this ancient monster would echo through geological time, influencing the evolution of everything from giant sea scorpions to modern sharks. The impact of Anomalocaris on Cambrian ecosystems extended far beyond its direct predation effects. The presence of this apex predator created selective pressures that drove the evolution of defensive innovations throughout the marine community. Creatures that could avoid, escape, or survive encounters with Anomalocaris were more likely to reproduce and pass on their defensive traits. This evolutionary arms race between predator and prey accelerated the development of sophisticated biological technologies that would define marine life for eons to come. The reign of Anomalocaris marked a fundamental shift in how life functioned on Earth. Prior to its emergence, the oceans had been dominated by filter feeders and simple grazers that lived in relative peace. The arrival of this apex predator transformed the marine environment into a dangerous battlefield where survival required constant vigilance and sophisticated defensive strategies. The evolutionary innovations triggered by the presence of Anomalocaris would eventually lead to the development of even more formidable predators, that would push the boundaries of size
Giant
and
squids and
intelligence to
The Ordovician
terrifying
period,
new
beginning
extremes.
around 485 million years ago,
witnessed the emergence of oceanic predators that combined devastating size with sophisticated hunting capabilities. While the Cambrian explosion had produced the first monsters, the Ordovician seas became dominated by nautiloid cephalopods that possessed both the crushing power of modern tanks and the advanced anatomy of their modern relatives. These weren't the relatively simple predators of earlier periods, but rather complex organisms that could adapt their hunting strategies and process information about their environment with remarkable efficiency. The most formidable of these predators belonged to a group of straight-shelled nautiloids that grew to proportions that would dwarf most modern marine animals. These creatures possessed rigid, cone-shaped shells that could extend up to 30 feet in length, making them the largest predators of their time, and creating mobile fortresses that combine protection with streamlined design. Unlike their modern cephalopod relatives who abandoned external shells for speed and flexibility, these ancient giants retained their armor while developing the hunting capabilities that would make them the apex predators of their time. Anomalocaris stood as the undisputed ruler of these prehistoric seas, representing the pinnacle of armored cephalopod evolution. This massive predator combined the anatomical sophistication of modern squid and octopuses with the protective advantages of a heavily armored shell. The creature's advanced nervous system allowed it to assess threats and adapt its behavior based on the specific characteristics of different prey species. This anatomical sophistication transformed Cambrian from a simple predator into a formidable hunter that could outmaneuver as well as overpower its victims. The jet propulsion system employed by Cambrian provided it with the ability to launch surprise attacks from seemingly impossible distances. The creature could remain motionless in the water column, appearing to be nothing more than a large piece of debris, before suddenly erupting forward with explosive speed. This propulsion mechanism worked by forcing water through specialized chambers within the shell, creating directed thrust that could accelerate the massive predator toward its target faster than most prey could react. The element of surprise was crucial to the hunting success of these giants, as their enormous size made sustained pursuit impractical. The tentacles of Cambrian represented some of the most sophisticated grasping mechanisms ever evolved by a marine predator. These muscular appendages could extend far beyond the opening of the shell, allowing the creature to capture prey while keeping its vital organs protected within the armored cone. The tentacles possessed incredible strength, capable of crushing the shells of smaller organisms or holding larger prey while the predator maneuvered them toward its mouth. The flexibility of these appendages allowed Cambrian to manipulate captured organisms with precision, positioning them for optimal processing by its powerful beak. The beak-like mouth of this armored giant functioned as a biological can opener, capable of cracking through the hardest shells and exoskeletons that had evolved during this period. The beak consisted of two sharp, curved pieces that could apply tremendous crushing force to concentrated areas of prey armor. This mechanism allowed Cambrian to process even the most heavily defended organisms, systematically breaking through protective shells to access the soft tissues within. The efficiency of this feeding apparatus made virtually no organism safe from predation, regardless of how sophisticated their defensive adaptations had become. The cone-shaped shell that protected Cambrian served multiple functions beyond simple defense. The streamlined design reduced drag as the creature moved through the water, while the pointed tip could be used as a battering ram during attacks. The shell's internal structure contained gas-filled chambers that controlled buoyancy, allowing the predator to hover at specific depths or adjust its position in the water column with remarkable precision. This buoyancy control system provided Cambrian with three-dimensional mobility that few other predators could match. Encounters with these massive predators in the murky depths of Ordovician seas would have been terrifying experiences for any organism unfortunate enough to cross their path. The combination of massive size, protective armor, and advanced anatomy created predators that seemed almost supernatural in their capabilities. Smaller creatures had no effective defense against these giants, which could pursue them into virtually any hiding place and overcome even the most sophisticated escape strategies through sheer determination and anatomical advantages. The hunting strategies employed by Cambrian revealed the sophisticated nature of these predators' anatomy. These creatures could assess the defensive capabilities of potential prey and adjust their attack methods accordingly. Against heavily armored organisms, they would use their shells as battering rams, stunning prey before using their tentacles to manipulate them into vulnerable positions. Against faster, more agile prey, they would rely on stealth and surprise attacks, using their jet propulsion to close distances before victims could escape. The ecological impact of these armored giants extended far beyond their direct predation effects. The presence of such formidable predators drove the evolution of defensive innovations throughout the marine community, forcing other organisms to develop increasingly sophisticated protective mechanisms. The arms race between these massive predators and their prey accelerated evolutionary innovation, leading to the development of new shell designs, escape behaviors, and defensive strategies that would influence marine ecosystems for millions of years. The success of Cambrian and its relatives established cephalopods as the dominant marine predators of the Ordovician period, a position they would maintain for millions of years. These creatures demonstrated that anatomical sophistication could be just as effective as size or strength in determining predatory success. Their ability to adapt their hunting strategies and process information about their environment provided them with advantages that purely physical adaptations could not match. The evolutionary innovations developed by these armored cephalopods would influence the design of marine predators for eons to come. Their combination of protective shells, jet propulsion, grasping appendages, and crushing beaks created a template for oceanic predation that would be refined and modified by countless future species. The anatomical sophistication demonstrated by these creatures established complex body plans as a crucial factor in predatory success, setting the stage for the evolution of even more formidable marine hunters. The reign of these armored giants represented the peak of cephalopod evolution before other predators began to challenge their dominance. Their success demonstrated that mollusks could evolve into apex predators capable of dominating entire ecosystems through a combination of physical adaptations and anatomical sophistication. As the Ordovician period drew to a close, evolutionary forces were already at work that would eventually challenge their supremacy and give rise to an entirely different type of predator that would transform the oceans with arthropod efficiency and mechanical precision. The rise of the sea scorpions. The Silurian period, beginning around 444 million years ago, marked a revolutionary shift in oceanic predation as arthropods evolved into the most feared hunters the seas had ever known. Following a devastating mass extinction that had cleared the waters of many previous predators, the surviving arthropods began an extraordinary evolutionary transformation that would produce some of the most formidable aquatic predators in Earth's history. These weren't the relatively small arthropods of earlier periods, but rather massive, heavily armored creatures that combined the mobility of modern crabs with the predatory instincts of apex hunters. Eurypterids emerged as the undisputed rulers of these ancient waters, growing to sizes that would dwarf most modern marine predators. These arthropods possessed segmented bodies covered in protective chitinous armor that provided both flexibility and defensive capabilities. Their body plan consisted of a frontal prosoma that housed their sensory organs and feeding apparatus, connected to a posterior opistosoma that contained their vital organs and propulsion systems. This design allowed them to move through water with surprising agility while maintaining the protective advantages of their armored exoskeletons. The largest of these predators, Dunkleosteus rhenanii, reached lengths of 2.5 meters, making it the largest arthropod ever recorded in Earth's history. The sheer size of these creatures transformed them into living submarines that could dominate any aquatic environment they inhabited. Fossil evidence from the Imschian-Clere Formation reveals Caliceri measuring over 14 inches in length, with the complete appendage estimated to have reached nearly 18 inches. These massive grasping claws could generate crushing forces capable of breaking through the shells and bones of virtually any prey organism they encountered. The pterygoids represented one of the most fearsome groups within the Eurypterid family, possessing long, powerful segmented bodies like modern scorpions, but equipped with large flat paddles for swimming instead of stingers. These four-eyed hunters had slender pincers, similar to those of modern whip scorpions, which they likely used to grab the soft tails of prehistoric fish. Their paddle-like appendages functioned as highly efficient propulsion systems that allowed them to move through water with deceptive speed, enabling these massive predators to launch surprise attacks on unsuspecting prey. The Styloneurians developed a different approach to predation, featuring elongated and powerful legs that may have allowed them to walk on land, similar to modern crabs. These Eurypterids possessed long, slender walking legs as their final pair of appendages, distinguishing them from their paddle-equipped relatives. The legs of many Styloneurians were robust enough to support their weight on solid surfaces, giving them access to new hunting grounds and prey species that purely aquatic predators couldn't reach. The compound eyes of these arthropod predators provided them with sophisticated visual capabilities that allowed them to detect movement in the murky waters of their hunting grounds. These complex visual systems could process information about prey movements, potential threats, and environmental changes with remarkable efficiency. The positioning of these eyes on the prosoma gave Eurypterids excellent peripheral vision, making it nearly impossible for prey to approach without being detected. This visual acuity was particularly crucial in the turbid waters of river mouths and shallow coastal areas where visibility was often limited. The powerful claws of Eurypterids represented some of the most devastating weapons ever evolved by aquatic predators. These appendages, called caliceri, were equipped with sharp pincers that could grab, hold, and systematically dismember prey with ruthless efficiency. The mechanical advantage provided by the segmented structure of these claws allowed Eurypterids to apply tremendous crushing forces to specific areas of their victims, breaking through protective shells and accessing the soft tissues within. The precision with which these predators could manipulate their prey demonstrated a level of predatory sophistication that wouldn't be matched by marine arthropods for millions of years. The segmented body design of Eurypterids provided them with remarkable flexibility while maintaining the protective advantages of their armored exoskeletons. Each segment could move independently, allowing these predators to twist and bend their bodies in ways that gave them exceptional maneuverability in three-dimensional aquatic environments. This flexibility was particularly important during predation attempts, as it allowed Eurypterids to position their claws and mouth parts optimally for processing different types of prey. The hunting grounds of Eurypterids encompassed shallow seas, river mouths, and coastal environments where they could exploit the abundant marine life that inhabited these productive waters. These environments provided ideal conditions for ambush predation, with complex bottom topography and varying water depths that offered numerous hiding places for stalking prey. The ability of Eurypterids to move efficiently through both marine and brackish waters gave them access to diverse prey populations that other predators couldn't effectively exploit. Early fish that shared these environments with Eurypterids found themselves facing predators against which they had no effective defenses. The primitive fish of the Silurian period lacked the speed, maneuverability, and defensive capabilities needed to escape these armored hunters. Many early fish species possessed only basic swimming abilities and minimal protective features, making them easy targets for the sophisticated hunting techniques employed by Eurypterids. The predation pressure exerted by these arthropod hunters drove rapid evolutionary changes in early fish populations, forcing them to develop new defensive strategies and escape behaviors. The dominance of Eurypterids in aquatic ecosystems occurred during a crucial period in Earth's history when life was just beginning to colonize terrestrial environments. While the first plants and arthropods were establishing themselves on land, the waters remained under the control of these armored predators. Some Eurypterid species developed the ability to venture onto land for short periods, using their powerful legs to move across mudflats and shallow waters in pursuit of prey. The evolutionary success of Eurypterids influenced the development of marine ecosystems for millions of years, establishing arthropods as the dominant predatory group in many aquatic environments. Their hunting strategies, body plans, and ecological roles created templates that would be refined and modified by countless future species. However, their reign would not last forever. As the Devonian period approached, evolutionary forces were already at work that would challenge their supremacy and fundamentally alter the balance of power in Earth's ancient seas. Dunkleosteus, the bone-crushing Leviathan. The Devonian period, spanning from 419 to 358 million years ago, marked a revolutionary turning point in Earth's oceans as vertebrates finally began mounting a serious challenge to the arthropod predators that had dominated marine ecosystems for millions of years. This era, often called the Age of Fishes, witnessed an explosive diversification of vertebrate life forms that would forever change the balance of power in prehistoric seas. The waters teemed with primitive sharks, early bony fish, and lobe-finned fish that began building complex reef systems, creating habitats that supported marine life in unprecedented abundance. These new vertebrate predators possessed advantages that arthropods could not match, including internal skeletons that allowed for greater size and more efficient muscle attachment points. The emergence of placoderms, or armored fish, represented a quantum leap in predatory evolution that would redefine what it meant to be an apex predator. These creatures combined the protective advantages of external armor with the internal skeletal structure of vertebrates, creating predators that were both heavily defended and capable of growing to monstrous proportions. The bony plates that covered their heads and necks formed impenetrable fortresses that could withstand attacks from even the most powerful arthropod predators. These armored fish developed during a time when the ocean floor was littered with the remains of failed predators, and their evolutionary success demonstrated that vertebrates possessed the potential to dominate marine ecosystems through superior design and unprecedented size. Dunkleosteus torelli emerged from this evolutionary arms race as the ultimate expression of vertebrate predatory power, growing to lengths of up to 33 feet and establishing itself as the most fearsome predator the oceans had ever known. This armored leviathan possessed a head that was essentially a living battleship, with bone plates measuring up to 2 inches thick that formed an impenetrable shield around its brain and sensory organs. The massive skull of Dunkleosteus weighed hundreds of pounds, yet its internal structure was engineered with hollows and chambers that reduced weight while maintaining structural integrity. This engineering marvel allowed the creature to support its massive head while retaining the mobility needed for active predation. The bone-plated head of Dunkleosteus functioned as both defensive armor and a structural foundation for the most powerful jaws ever evolved by a vertebrate predator. The articulation points where the skull connected to the jaw mechanism were reinforced with additional bone deposits that could withstand the tremendous forces generated during feeding. The head plates extended backward to cover the neck region, creating a continuous armored surface that protected the creature's vital organs from retaliation by struggling prey. This armor was not merely thick, but was also strategically shaped to deflect attacks and distribute impact forces across the entire structure. The jaw mechanism of Dunkleosteus represented perhaps the most revolutionary adaptation in vertebrate predatory evolution, generating bite forces of approximately 11,000 pounds per square inch that rivaled those of modern great white sharks, despite the creature's ancient origins. The jaw muscles were arranged in a configuration that maximized mechanical advantage, with attachment points positioned to generate maximum force at the moment of impact. This powerful bite mechanism could process prey items that would have been impossible for other predators to handle. Instead of conventional teeth, Dunkleosteus possessed blade-like bone plates that were far more deadly than any dental arrangement seen in other predators. These shearing edges were self-sharpening, with the upper and lower plates grinding against each other during jaw closure to maintain razor-sharp cutting surfaces. The bone plates were arranged in a scissor-like configuration that could slice through flesh and bone with surgical precision, while the crushing surfaces could pulverize shells and armor plates into fragments. This unique adaptation eliminated the problems of tooth breakage and wear that plagued other predators, providing Dunkleosteus with a permanent set of weapons that improved with use. The hunting strategy employed by Dunkleosteus relied on explosive bursts of speed that allowed this massive predator to launch surprise attacks on unsuspecting prey. Despite its enormous size, the creature possessed a streamlined body design that minimized drag and maximized thrust during acceleration. The powerful tail and posterior fins could generate tremendous propulsive force, allowing Dunkleosteus to ambush prey with shocking speed and precision. This hunting technique was particularly effective against other armored fish, which relied on their protective plating rather than speed for defense against predators. The attacks launched by Dunkleosteus transformed the Devonian oceans into battlefields where armored titans clashed in struggles that determined the fate of entire ecosystems. When this predator struck, the impact could be heard across vast distances as bone plates collided with crushing force. The creature's preferred prey included other large placoderms, early sharks, and any organism unfortunate enough to enter its hunting territory. The aftermath of these encounters left the seafloor littered with the fragments of shattered armor and broken bones, testament to the devastating power of this apex predator's attacks. The ecological impact of Dunkleosteus extended far beyond its direct predation effects, as its presence drove evolutionary changes throughout the marine community. Smaller fish developed improved swimming abilities and escape behaviors to avoid encounters with this monster, while other predators were forced to specialize in different prey types to avoid direct competition. The success of Dunkleosteus demonstrated that vertebrates could evolve into apex predators capable of dominating entire ecosystems through superior size, armor, and weaponry. The reign of Dunkleosteus represented the absolute pinnacle of armored fish evolution, demonstrating the maximum potential of the placoderm body plan before environmental changes would drive these creatures to extinction. This predator had achieved a level of predatory sophistication that would not be matched by marine vertebrates for millions of years, establishing templates for oceanic predation that would influence the evolution of sharks, marine reptiles, and countless other predators throughout Earth's history. As the Devonian period drew to a close around 359 million years ago, the dominance of these marine giants was about to face an unprecedented challenge. The changing atmospheric conditions and continental configurations were creating new environments where entirely different types of predators would emerge to claim dominion over realms that had never before supported complex life. When insects ruled the skies. The Carboniferous period, beginning around 359 million years ago, transformed Earth's continents into vast tropical swamp forests where the atmosphere contained over 30% oxygen compared to modern levels of 21%. This oxygen-rich environment allowed arthropods to grow to sizes that seem impossible by today's standards. The continents were covered by towering club moss trees, massive horsetails, and giant ferns that would eventually become the coal deposits that give this period its name. The humid, swampy landscape provided the perfect breeding ground for creatures that would dominate both the forest floor and the skies above in ways that had never been seen before. The absence of birds, bats, and other flying vertebrates left the prehistoric skies completely open to insect domination. Without any aerial competitors or predators, insects were free to evolve flight capabilities and hunting strategies that would have been impossible in later periods when vertebrates controlled the airways. This vacant ecological niche allowed flying insects to grow to unprecedented sizes and develop predatory behaviors that would make them the undisputed masters of the Carboniferous skies. The lack of aerial vertebrates meant that insects could evolve without the pressure of avoiding larger, more powerful flying predators. Meganeura emerged as the ruler of these ancient skies, with wingspans reaching over 65 centimeters that allowed them to soar through the humid air with deadly precision. These giant dragonfly-like insects possessed powerful mandibles equipped with sharp teeth that could tackle large, struggling prey with ruthless efficiency. Their spiny front limbs functioned as grasping weapons that could snatch other insects from the air or pluck them from vegetation with surgical accuracy. Like modern dragonflies, they used their compound eyes to execute precise ambush attacks on unsuspecting prey. The sheer size of these predators meant that virtually no other flying insect was safe from their hunting activities. The predatory lifestyle of Meganeura was perfectly adapted to the insect-rich environment of the Carboniferous forests. These aerial hunters could spot movement from considerable distances and possessed the speed and maneuverability needed to pursue prey through the dense vegetation of the swamp forests. Their powerful flight muscles allowed them to hover, dive, and change direction with the agility needed to capture smaller insects that attempted to escape through complex flight patterns. The hunting efficiency of these giants meant that they could control entire populations of smaller flying insects within their territories. The fossil evidence reveals that Meganeura nymphs spent their early lives in the water, just like modern dragonflies, where they developed powerful grasping jaws that could attack aquatic prey, including fish, amphibian larvae, and water insects. This aquatic stage of their life cycle provided them with hunting experience that would prove valuable when they emerged as aerial predators. The transition from aquatic to aerial hunting demonstrated the versatility of these insects and their ability to exploit multiple ecological niches throughout their development. The griffin flies, or Meganosoptera, represented the pinnacle of insect predatory evolution during this period, with some species like Meganeuropsis permiana achieving wingspans of nearly 28 inches and body lengths of almost 17 inches. These massive insects were strong enough to catch and feed on lizards and other small vertebrates, demonstrating that invertebrate predators could successfully hunt animals with backbones. Their size and hunting capabilities established them as apex predators in the aerial ecosystems of the Carboniferous period. The forest floor of these ancient swamps was dominated by equally impressive arthropod giants, including Arthropleura, millipedes that could reach lengths of 8 feet as they crashed through the undergrowth. These massive creatures moved through the forest like living bulldozers, using their powerful legs to push through dense vegetation and fallen logs. The size of these millipedes meant that they could access food sources that smaller arthropods could not reach, while their armored exoskeletons provided protection against the few predators large enough to threaten them. The hunting strategies employed by these oversized predators were as diverse as the creatures themselves. Some relied on speed and agility to pursue prey through the air, while others used stealth and camouflage to ambush unsuspecting victims. The giant millipedes used their size and armored bodies to simply overwhelm smaller organisms, while the flying predators developed sophisticated flight patterns that allowed them to intercept prey with devastating accuracy. The variety of hunting techniques demonstrated the adaptability of arthropods when given the opportunity to grow to enormous sizes. Encountering these monsters in the humid, oxygen-rich forests of the Carboniferous period would have been a terrifying experience for any organism. The constant buzzing of giant wings overhead, the crashing sounds of massive millipedes moving through the undergrowth, and the presence of numerous other oversized arthropods would have created an environment where survival required constant vigilance. The density of these predators meant that smaller organisms had to develop sophisticated escape strategies or risk becoming prey to creatures that seemed almost supernatural in their size and capabilities. The alien landscape of the Carboniferous coal swamps provided the perfect habitat for these arthropod giants. The combination of high humidity, abundant vegetation, and warm temperatures created conditions that supported diverse ecosystems where arthropods could thrive. The extensive wetland environments provided breeding grounds for aquatic insects, while the dense forests offered hunting territories for aerial predators. The interconnected nature of these habitats allowed arthropods to exploit multiple ecological niches and maintain stable populations of giant predators. The diversity of giant arthropods during this period extended beyond just the famous flying insects and millipedes. Enormous scorpions stalked through the forest undergrowth, while giant centipedes used their venomous fangs to subdue prey. The presence of multiple types of oversized arthropods created complex predator-prey relationships that shaped the entire ecosystem. These creatures had evolved specialized hunting techniques and defensive strategies that allowed them to coexist while maintaining their roles as dominant predators. The success of these arthropod giants established invertebrates as the dominant terrestrial predators for millions of years, but their reign would eventually end as environmental changes reduced oxygen levels and new types of predators emerged. As the Carboniferous period drew to a close, the stage was being set for a completely different kind of predator,
The sailback predators
dominance over the
Permian
changing
period,
landscapes
stretching
of
from
Earth.
299 to 252 million years ago, marked a revolutionary transformation in terrestrial ecosystems as synapsids evolved into the first true apex predators capable of dominating land environments. The massive environmental changes occurring during this era created perfect conditions for the emergence of formidable predators that would establish synapsid dominance over terrestrial food webs. The continents had merged to form the supercontinent Pangaea, drastically altering global climate patterns and creating increasingly arid conditions across vast regions of the planet. These environmental shifts favored synapsids over the amphibians that had dominated the previous Carboniferous swamps, as these mammal-like reptiles possessed crucial adaptations like scaly skin and shelled eggs that allowed them to thrive in drier environments. The most iconic predator of this period was Dimetrodon, a 14-foot sail-backed carnivore that stalked the river valleys and plains of the early Permian landscape. This formidable predator represented a complete departure from the arthropod giants that had previously dominated terrestrial ecosystems, establishing synapsids as the new rulers of land-based food chains. Dimetrodon walked on 4 sprawling legs that provided it with stability and power while navigating the increasingly diverse terrain of Permian environments. The creature's robust build and powerful musculature allowed it to pursue prey across various landscapes, from riverbanks to open plains, making it one of the most successful predators of its time. The distinctive sail that rose from Dimetrodon's back created one of the most recognizable silhouettes in prehistoric predatory design. This massive structure, supported by elongated neural spines that could extend several feet above the creature's backbone, likely regulated temperature and served as an intimidation display. The thermoregulatory advantage would have provided crucial benefits during hunting, allowing the predator to remain active during temperature fluctuations that might have slowed down its cold-blooded prey. When viewed from certain angles, the sail would have doubled the apparent size of the predator, creating a psychological advantage that could have been crucial during confrontations with other large animals. The dental armament of Dimetrodon revealed the sophisticated nature of its predatory adaptations. The creature's powerful jaws were lined with sharp teeth of varying sizes, each specialized for different aspects of prey processing. The most prominent features were massive canines designed specifically for delivering killing bites to large prey items. These elongated teeth could penetrate deep into victim tissues, causing massive trauma that would quickly incapacitate struggling animals. The varied tooth sizes allowed Dimetrodon to process different types of prey efficiently, from large insects and amphibians to smaller reptiles that shared its environment. The hunting strategies employed by Dimetrodon were perfectly adapted to the increasingly arid Permian environment, where water sources became concentrated in specific areas that attracted diverse prey populations. The predator likely used ambush tactics near waterholes and river crossings, where prey animals would be forced to venture into open areas while drinking or feeding. The combination of size, power, and specialized dental equipment made Dimetrodon capable of taking down prey much larger than itself, establishing it as the undisputed apex predator of early Permian ecosystems. The success of Dimetrodon established synapsids as the dominant terrestrial predators, creating complex food webs that rival those of modern ecosystems in their sophistication. These mammal-like reptiles occupied various ecological niches, with different species specializing in hunting specific types of prey. The presence of multiple predator types created a hierarchical system where different hunting strategies and prey preferences reduced direct competition while maximizing the efficiency of energy transfer through the ecosystem. The evolutionary innovations developed by these sail-backed synapsids established templates for terrestrial predation that would influence the design of countless future species. Their hunting strategies, dental specializations, and locomotive adaptations created blueprints for predatory success that would be refined and modified throughout subsequent periods. The sophisticated predator-prey relationships developed during this time demonstrated that terrestrial ecosystems could support complex food webs comparable to those found in modern environments. The diversity of synapsid predators during the Permian period extended beyond just the famous sail-backed forms. Various species developed different approaches to hunting, with some focusing on small, agile prey while others specialized in taking down large herbivores. This diversification created stable predator communities that could exploit virtually every available food source, from insects and small reptiles to massive armored herbivores that had evolved their own defensive strategies. The mammal-like reptiles of the Permian demonstrated remarkable adaptability in their predatory techniques, developing hunting behaviors that would not be seen again until the evolution of true mammals millions of years later. Their ability to regulate body temperature more effectively than their cold-blooded competitors gave them significant advantages in the variable climates of Pangaea. This physiological superiority allowed them to remain active during temperature fluctuations that would have slowed down other predators. The dominance of these sail-backed predators seemed complete by the Middle Permian period, with synapsids controlling terrestrial food webs across multiple continents. Their success had established them as the inheritors of the land environments that had been vacated by the decline of amphibian dominance. The complex ecosystems they created supported diverse communities of both predators and prey, creating a biological richness that had never before existed on land. Yet beneath this apparent stability, massive environmental changes were already beginning to threaten the continued success of these specialized predators. Volcanic activity was increasing across Pangaea, and atmospheric composition was starting to shift in ways that would challenge the survival of even the most adaptable organisms. The stage was being set for an environmental catastrophe of unprecedented scale: the Great Dying and Rise of the Archosaurs. Around 252 million years ago, massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia caused the most devastating catastrophe in Earth's entire history. The Permian Triassic extinction event, known as the Great Dying, eliminated approximately 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial species in a relatively brief geological timeframe. This catastrophic event marked the end of the Paleozoic Era and fundamentally altered the course of life on Earth. The Siberian Traps eruptions released unprecedented quantities of greenhouse gases and ash into the atmosphere, creating environmental conditions that made survival nearly impossible for most organisms. The volcanic eruptions released vast quantities of carbon dioxide, methane, and hydrogen sulfide into the atmosphere while simultaneously spewing enormous volumes of ash and toxic particles across the planet. These emissions created a toxic atmosphere that poisoned both terrestrial and marine environments on a global scale. The increased greenhouse gases caused dramatic temperature increases that disrupted weather patterns and created hostile conditions for life. Ocean acidification occurred as carbon dioxide dissolved into seawater, making it difficult for marine organisms to build shells and skeletons. Oxygen levels dropped precipitously in both terrestrial and marine environments, creating widespread dead zones where life could not survive. The environmental chaos created by these volcanic eruptions triggered a cascade of ecological collapses that devastated food webs across the planet. Primary producers like plants and photosynthetic organisms died off rapidly, eliminating the foundation of most food chains. Marine ecosystems collapsed as coral reefs died and plankton populations crashed, removing the base of oceanic food webs. Terrestrial ecosystems suffered equally severe damage as plant communities died and insect populations collapsed, eliminating food sources for larger animals. The interconnected nature of these ecosystems meant that the collapse of one component triggered failures throughout the entire system. The few organisms that survived this environmental holocaust inherited a planet that was essentially empty of complex life. The post-extinction world was characterized by simplified ecosystems with drastically reduced biodiversity and minimal ecological complexity. Surviving organisms faced little competition for resources, but they also had to cope with continued environmental instability and the absence of the complex ecological relationships that had supported pre-extinction communities. The recovery process was slow and uneven, with some groups taking millions of years to rebuild their diversity and ecological roles. Lystrosaurus emerged as one of the most successful survivors of this catastrophic event, briefly becoming the most common vertebrate on a nearly empty planet. This squat, tusked herbivore about the size of a pig possessed characteristics that allowed it to survive the harsh post-extinction environment. The creature's ability to burrow provided protection from extreme temperature fluctuations and toxic atmospheric conditions. Its simple digestive system could process the limited plant material available in the devastated landscape, while its small size reduced its metabolic requirements during times of scarce resources. For millions of years, Lystrosaurus dominated the terrestrial ecosystems of the early Triassic period. The early Triassic period represented a crucial turning point in evolutionary history as new groups of organisms began to fill the ecological niches left vacant by the mass extinction. The surviving synapsids, including Lystrosaurus, would gradually be challenged by a new group of reptiles called Archosaurs. These Archosaurs possessed several key advantages that allowed them to thrive in the post-extinction world, including improved locomotion, advanced respiratory systems, and sophisticated feeding mechanisms. The competition between surviving synapsids and emerging Archosaurs would shape the recovery of terrestrial ecosystems throughout the Triassic period. The rise of Archosaurs marked the beginning of a fundamental shift in terrestrial predation as these reptiles evolved into increasingly sophisticated and formidable hunters. The group diversified rapidly during the Triassic period, producing numerous lineages that filled different ecological roles. Some Archosaurs became specialized fish eaters, while others evolved into powerful terrestrial predators capable of taking down large prey. The success of Archosaurs established reptilian dominance over terrestrial ecosystems, gradually displacing the synapsids that had survived the Great Dying. Roasuchians emerged as the most formidable predators of the Triassic period, with species like Postosuchus growing to lengths of 16 to 20 feet and establishing themselves as the apex predators of their time. These massive crocodile-like predators possessed powerful jaws lined with sharp teeth designed for crushing bone and tearing flesh. Their robust limbs and advanced locomotive systems allowed them to pursue prey across diverse terrains, while their large size provided them with the strength needed to overpower even the most heavily defended herbivores. The dominance of Roasuchians created a competitive environment that would shape the evolution of all other reptile groups. The early dinosaurs that appeared during the Triassic period were relatively small and unimpressive compared to the massive Roasuchians that ruled the terrestrial ecosystems. These early dinosaurs occupied marginal ecological niches and were overshadowed by the more successful Archosaur lineages for millions of years. The competitive pressure exerted by Roasuchians and other large Archosaurs forced early dinosaurs to develop specialized adaptations that would eventually prove crucial to their later success. The coexistence of these different Archosaur groups created complex ecological relationships that drove evolutionary innovation throughout the Triassic period. The end of the Triassic period was marked by another significant extinction event that fundamentally altered the balance of power among Archosaur groups. This extinction event eliminated many of the large Roasuchians and other competing reptile lineages, creating opportunities for dinosaurs to expand into new ecological niches. The selective nature of this extinction event favored smaller, more adaptable organisms while eliminating many of the large, specialized predators that had dominated Triassic ecosystems. The transition from the Triassic to the Jurassic period marked the end of one evolutionary chapter and the beginning of another. The extinction of the Roasuchians and other large Archosaurs removed the primary competitors that had prevented dinosaurs from achieving ecological dominance. This transition represented a fundamental shift in terrestrial ecosystems as dinosaurs began the evolutionary radiation that would make them the dominant terrestrial vertebrates. Yet this rise to dominance had been built upon millions of years of evolutionary experimentation by countless predecessors who had already explored the fundamental possibilities of predatory life. The Archosaurs that emerged from this evolutionary foundation would fundamentally reshape terrestrial ecosystems beginning 252 million years ago in the early Triassic period. These reptiles possessed advanced respiratory systems and improved locomotion that gave them crucial advantages over the surviving synapsids in the post-extinction world. When we think about prehistoric monsters, dinosaurs dominate our imagination as the ultimate ancient predators. But these Mesozoic giants were actually latecomers to a planet that had already been shaped by hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary experimentation. The microscopic stromatolite builders had spent billions of years transforming Earth's atmosphere, while bizarre Ediacaran organisms like Dickinsonia pioneered multicellular life in ways that seem almost alien today. The Cambrian explosion produced the first true predators, followed by armored cephalopods, giant sea scorpions, and massive insects that ruled their respective eras with sophisticated hunting strategies that established the fundamental patterns of predation we still see today.